Right. Welcome back for another deep dive. You know, we always got to go deep on something interesting.
Yeah.
And today,
Absolute.
today is no different. We are talking about, well, we're talking about Bitcoin, obviously, as always,
Of course, yeah.
but something a little bit different.
Yes.
We're looking at BlackRock.
Okay.
You know, BlackRock, the biggest asset manager
Yeah.
in the world,
Hugest. Yeah, right.
they launched a Bitcoin ETF.
They did.
This thing has just absolutely exploded.
It has exploded. It's been remarkable.
It's really remarkable to see. I mean, it's over $50 billion
yeah.
in assets under management
Mm.
in under a year.
Less than a year, right?
That's crazy.
I think they're calling it the greatest launch in ETF history.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that quote.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see that kind of move coming from somebody like BlackRock,
Right.
who is
You're
usually
still pretty conservative, right?
very conservative, you know, it really begs the question, like, what do they
What do they know?
What do they know that we don't?
That we don't exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe before we even get into that,
Mhm.
for our listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with, you know, the world of finance,
Right.
maybe just give us a real quick, like, what is an ETF and, like, why is this growth so significant?
Sure. So an ETF stands for an exchange traded fund. And essentially, it is a basket of assets.
Okay.
So you can think of it almost like a mutual fund that trades on an exchange.
Okay.
So rather than buying individual stocks, you could buy an ETF that, say, tracks the S&P 500, or in this case, tracks the price of Bitcoin. And so the reason this is so significant is because it allows investors to get exposure
Yeah.
to Bitcoin
Right.
without actually having to hold the underlying asset.
Okay.
So they don't have to worry about wallets and keys and all the security that goes into that.
Interesting. So it kind of makes it a little bit more accessible.
Exactly. It lowers the barrier to entry,
Okay.
which is why it's been so popular.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. 50 billion in under a year. That's
It's a lot of money.
a lot of money. So obviously this is going to have some kind of effect on the price of Bitcoin,
Right.
right?
Right.
I mean, we've all seen, Bitcoin's been going up like crazy
Bitcoin has been on a tear
lately,
Yeah.
right? How much of that can we directly attribute to this ETF?
That's a good question.
Right.
And it's difficult to say for certain how much of the price increase is directly
Yeah.
attributable to this ETF. But there's no doubt that it has played a role. I mean, when you
Yeah.
have this much institutional money
Yeah.
coming into the market, it's going to have an impact.
So it's not just like a one-to-one
Yeah.
correlation, but
It's definitely a fact.
it's a factor. I mean, it's also about investor psychology, right? When people see big players like BlackRock coming in, it can create a sense of legitimacy, and that can lead to more people wanting to invest,
Right.
which can drive the price up further.
Right. It's like the whole, fear of missing out.
Exactly.
FOMO. The FOMO, right?
So, you mentioned something earlier that I really wanted to touch on. It's this idea that crypto is becoming
More mainstream.
more mainstream. Exactly. There's a quote that I think really captures this. It's from Nate Gerasi. He's an ETF expert.
Okay.
And he said that this BlackRock ETF launch is legitimizing crypto as an institutional asset class.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing that quote. So, I mean, what does that actually mean? Like, how are the big traditional financial institutions actually viewing crypto now compared to maybe
Right.
a few years ago?
Yeah, it's a completely different landscape than it was even just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think for a long time, institutions viewed crypto as this kind of fringe,
We were
risky,
blessed.
Wild West. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think BlackRock's move has really signaled a shift.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not the only ones. We're seeing custodians like Fidelity offering crypto custody services. Regulators are starting to create more clear frameworks for crypto. And we're even seeing pension funds allocating small portions of their portfolios to crypto.
That's big. Yeah. Pension funds. It's like people's retirements. It is people's retirements. And
It's a lot of trust.
it's a big deal. And I think it speaks to the growing acceptance
Okay.
of crypto as a legitimate asset class.
So, looking ahead then, what does all this mean for the future of investing?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that we're going to see more institutional adoption of crypto. I mean, the floodgates have kind of opened now that BlackRock has made this move.
So do you think this is a sustainable trend, or is this, just a blip?
It's hard to say for sure. Crypto is still a very volatile asset class.
That's true.
And there are definitely risks that investors need to be aware of.
Such as?
Well, I mean, regulation is still a big one.
Right.
We don't know how governments around the world are going to continue to regulate crypto, and that could have a big impact on the market.
Yeah.
There's also the risk of cyber attacks, hacks, scams, you know.
It's still kind of the digital Wild West in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely maturing, but there's still risks there. And then, of course, there's just the inherent volatility of crypto.
Yeah.
I mean, the price can swing wildly in a very short period of time.
Right.
So investors need to be prepared for that.
And let's be real, like, BlackRock's not doing this out of the goodness of their hearts.
No, they're a business.
Right. They're a business. There's a profit motive here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they're charging fees on that $50 billion that they're managing.
Right.
And they're betting that, this is just the beginning, if more institutions follow suit, the inflow of capital into crypto could be enormous, which could drive the price even higher. And that would benefit them as a major holder of Bitcoin. So it's smart business. But it also raises questions about who really benefits from this mainstreaming of crypto.
Right. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
It is in a way.
In a way. On the one hand, it's like, oh, you know, crypto is becoming more legitimate. It's more accessible.
Right.
Well, we just opening the door for the big institutions to kind of come in and, you know, take more control.
It's a valid concern, I think.
Yeah.
And it's something that investors need to be thinking about.
So for our listeners out there,
you
know, what are some of the key takeaways from all of this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that the landscape of crypto is changing rapidly. BlackRock's move into the space is a major signal that institutional adoption is happening, and that's likely to have a significant impact on the market going forward.
Right. I mean, $50 billion in under a year.
That's not nothing.
That's not nothing.
Yeah.
So, you know, as we wrap up here, what's kind of the final thought-provoking question that you would leave our listeners with?
I think the question to ask yourself is, now that big players like BlackRock are in the game, what does that mean for you? As an investor, do you need to pay more attention to this evolving landscape? Is it time to reconsider your investment strategy?
Yeah.
Those are the questions that I think everyone should be asking themselves.
You heard it here first, folks. This is not financial advice.
Definitely not.
But hopefully this deep dive has given you the tools to start to think critically about, you know, the world of crypto, what's happening with Bitcoin, you know, BlackRock's influence on the markets.
It's a fascinating space.
It is.
And it's only going to get more interesting.
Absolutely. So keep digging, keep learning, and make sure you're making informed decisions.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
And thanks for listening. We'll see you next.